right? So if you have, and we all are guilty of this, if we have Isha who we feel is not obeying us, then maybe we're not loving her. Maybe it's a checkpoint. Check your love and you'll see submission.
Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law.
See that? So now, prayerfully by now, we should have an understanding or overstanding that the wives submitting is talking about, the women being silent and submitting is talking about the wife to the husband. Okay. Now, so the question one might ask is, well, brother, what if I'm a sister? I know where you're going. I hear you in the spirit. I don't have a husband, so where does that leave me? All right. It's a good question, right? All right. So now, remember Shaul said, as also says the law, right? Let's go to Numbers 30. We're gonna read this whole chapter because remember, Shaul said, thus says the law. Where there is no law, sin is not imputed. Where there is no law, right? So if the law forbids a woman to speak, then we need to find out what he's talking about. 30:1.
And Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which Yah hath commanded. If a man vow a vow unto Yah, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth.
Okay.
If a woman also vow a vow unto Yah, and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow and her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand.
Now, does that make sense? Does that make sense? So if you don't have a husband, it's best for you to keep quiet. Because if your father don't say nothing and you vow yourself a vow, you are bound by that vow. That's what Shaul was talking about. Be silent. Don't say nothing. Don't lock yourself into a vow without permission or the proof of your father, right? Okay. So if the father, he says, if the woman vows and she binds herself and she lives at home with her father and the father don't say nothing, she's bound. But watch the power that the father has. Read the next verse.
But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth not any of her vows or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and Yah shall forgive her because her father disallowed her.
See that? So your father can bail you out according to the law. If a woman says something and your father hear it, and he's up, that ain't happening. Father can stop it. All right, go ahead.
And if she had at all a husband when she vowed or uttered aught out of her lips wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect, and Yah shall forgive her. But every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their souls, shall stand against her.
See that? So those that don't have a husband and don't have a father, you stand on your own. It's just that simple. You don't have a protection. You are a target to be taken advantage of, because why? if you don't have a father, if you are a widow, don't have a husband, you are a target. That's why society prays after women who don't have a male figure in their life to take advantage of you. For example, so much so that even when it comes to something like what they call public assistance, they don't want no man in the house. If they provide public assistance to you, they don't want no man in their house. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So what happens if you are a single white or single woman with children, and they find out that a man is living there? What's going to happen?
It may affect your benefits.
Well, so when the government finds out that a man is living there,
he's got to go.
The man got to get out. Or if you choose not to put him out, what could happen?
Like I said, you're going to lose your benefits.
Lose your benefits, and that means ultimately you could lose that house, right? Mm-hmm. Because the government is saying, we are your father, right? So I would rather have Yah to be my father than have the government to be my father, because the government can dictate to me things that I may not want to comply with. Right? All right? Did we finish that?
We're on verse 10.
Okay, go ahead.
And if she vowed in her husband's house or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it and held his peace at her and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. Mm-hmm. But if her husband hath utterly made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceedeth out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband hath made them void, and Yah shall forgive her. Mm-hmm. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. Mm-hmm. But if her husband altogether hold his peace at her from day to day, then he established all her vows, or all her bonds, which are upon her. He confirmeth them, because he hold his peace at her in the day that he heard them. Mm-hmm. But if he shall anyways make them void after that he have heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. Mm-hmm. These are the statutes which Yah commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between the father and his daughter, being yet in her youth in her father's house. Mm-hmm.
There you go. So that's what the law says. The law, when Shaul said, let the women learn in silence, that's what he's talking about right there. Now, I don't want to go there, but nobody in the days of old entered into the congregation but the priests. The women waited at the door, as well as the Israelite nation waited at the door. Only person was permitted in the priest, and there may have been some exceptions. So don't hold me down to the book with that. So we'll deal with that at a later time. But primarily, the only people who were allowed in tabernacle of the congregation were the priests, who was rendering the sacrifices and rendering the services in the tabernacle, right? Which later was replaced by the temple, right? So nobody was inside of a local congregation teaching anybody anything. Not even the men, right? Yah was the one that was doing the teaching. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 11. Can a woman pray or prophesy or preach or speak in the congregation? That's the question, right? So 1 Corinthians 11, let's start at verse 1. We're going to read down probably 5 or 6.
Be ye followers of me, even as I am a follower of Yahshua. Mm-hmm. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinances as I delivered them unto you. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Yahshua, and the head of every woman is the man, and the head of Yahshua is Yah. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered, dishonoreth her head, for that is even all one as if she were shaven.
Every woman that prayeth or prophesy with her head uncovered, dishonor her head. Now, is this the same Shaul that's saying let the women be silent? But now he's giving them permission to pray and prophesy? Either we got a contradiction, or we got a lunatic apostle, or we're misunderstanding what he is saying in his epistles, because here he's giving the women permission to pray and to prophesy. The only thing he's saying is that they cover their head. Now, what is he saying? Is he saying that they should have a turban to wrap around their head, as we see in most religious circles? Does the law say a woman's supposed to have a turban or wrap around her head? Answer me if thou can tell. Huh? See, we get caught up a lot of times with the culture and not with the covenant. We get caught up with the culture and not with the covenant. It's time out to get rid of the culture if the culture contradicts the covenant. I like that. The culture is fine, right? There's some powerful things in there, right? You know, people's brothers say, brother, you know, you prophesying when you pray, you teaching with your head covered. Right? You're not supposed to have your head covered, right? I can show you something to blow your head. You have no clue, because you're trying to quote Paul and you don't know what the law says about a man's cover or a woman's cover. The covering he's talking about is not talking about a turban on your head or a wrap on the head. Touch your neighbor and say, that's religion. We got big Hebrew organizations that won't let sisters come in the temple unless they got a wrap around the head. Won't let brothers come in the temple if he has a cover on his head. All because of this verse here, right? Does the law say a man, let's look at this carefully. Does the law say that a man cannot pray or prophesy with a covering on his head? If it does, show me where it says that, please. Because I have yet to find it. Does the law say a woman has to pray or prophesy with something on her head? A hat. Because I haven't seen that in the law either. But the first thing that people want to do when I come and as a guest to your temple is take your cover off, brother. Tell the sister to put a cover on her head. And I comply only because I'm here to make peace. But if I was to break that verse down that you're quoting from Shaul, his epistle, your head will be spinning. Probably will fall off the body. But I'm not going to come to your temple to debate with you and fight with you because you have a misunderstanding of the teachings of Shaul. That you have made a doctrine to bind people because this is what you think they should be doing in the temple.